You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. Ed, I don't care what Tim Anderson said at first base, where cameras caught him talking to Jose Abreu, and some people thought it was him saying, "I hate this place," after he did not advance on I believe it was a wild pitch, could have been a pass ball. He could have been saying, "I hate the pitch clock." He could have been saying, "I should be on second base." I've had a lot of people tell me what they think he's saying. None of that bothers me, and none of it concerns me. What I saw that stuck out to me over the weekend series with the White Sox and the Astros, where you lose yet another series. You lost 2 out of 3. You're averaging 2 out of 3 losses. You're 14-28. You have twice the losses as wins. What concerned me the most, or that stuck out to me the most, I don't know if it concerns me, it stuck out to me, was that moment when Anderson approaches Abreu and they embrace on the field. And it reminds me of when my teenage son, when he's upset about something, and he wants to look tough, and he doesn't want to hold the embrace too much. And he's bothered, and he's coming to me because he needs his dad for a moment. And you see Anderson embrace Abreu and pull away, and Abreu doesn't leave him. He continues to hold him, and you see Anderson's shoulders shake and shrug, and his head's down, and you see Abreu trying to offer words of encouragement to him, and I'm like, the White Sox have broken Tim Anderson, because this guy is down, he's in the dumps, this season is so hard on him, and I'm sure he's not the only guy in that dugout who feels that way, but here's a guy who Ozzie Guillen's saying isn't a leader, being hugged by a guy that Ozzie Guillen said recently wasn't a leader either, and these two guys are leaning on each other. One's having a rough start with the Astros, the other one in the middle of this horrible season. And to see Abreu hold on to Anderson and Anderson's reaction, that's the thing I zeroed in on over the weekend.
Well, really what it turns out was Abreu heard him say, I ate that hummus plate. And then he's holding him because he knows that if Tim just lets go of everything, he's going to pass out from the gas. It was purely a gastrointestinal event for Tim Anderson and Jose Abreu.
That's what your lip reading showed you? That's what you saw?
Keep in mind, my glasses broke the other day, so I can't really see much on my phone, and I didn't get to a computer screen for a couple of days here. So I might be wrong about that. But no, look, Tim Anderson is broken. He is a guy who probably realizes what a massive star he would be in any other market. And that's an indictment that I've placed on Jerry Reinsdorf and the White Sox before, of where Tim Anderson is one of the faces of Major League Baseball, according to the MLB. However, we don't know much about Tim Anderson in the local market because they only have 1 or 2 outlets that they'll let their players go through. So TA, if he was in anywhere, call it Tampa, Pittsburgh, doesn't matter, he'd be a huge deal. And he's not here because he's this guy that the MLB wants to promote because he's such a great player and he's such a good guy. And the White Sox, maybe he gets a shot, at a couple of interviews a year.
They handle their guys so close to the vest because I think they're mostly afraid that their players themselves will expose even more problems within the organization, which is why you have to fire Rick Hahn, you have to fire Kenny Williams, you have to fire Chris Getz and his poor minor league system into the sun, and Jerry Reinsdorf should sell the team. And this episode of Sox in the Basement brought to you by Cork and Carry at the Park, in the shadow of the ballpark at 33rd and Princeton, the official home of Sox in the Basement. We are giving away the staff of Cork and Carry today on this episode. We'll get into it in just a little bit. But I think that's a problem. You're right. It'd be great if we could hear more about what's going on with him and with the rest of the team. Maybe they need it. Maybe they need a therapy session. I was out in Blue Island this past weekend at a Mayfest event that was up and down Old Western Avenue. Over 100 some vendors and people selling things and artists and live music, and there was food up and down the street, and they suspended the liquor laws so they could all people could walk up and down. It was a big giant 3-block party, and we were sitting right in the middle of it for Southside Pod and Sox in the Basement. And the amount of listeners to this show that came up, first of all, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you came up, and those of you that apologized to me, I love you, man. I may have missed a show or two. This team is terrible. I understand. I totally get it.
We get it. We totally get it.
I totally get it. And
heck, I missed a show or two.
Yeah, listen, you did. You missed a show or two. And listen, the way that everybody speaks about it, the new listeners, because we signed up some people that are new today. We subscribed them while we were there, and we had some giveaways. And then the listeners that we've already had, and Sox fans in general walking up, they all basically said the same thing. I hate this team. Like, it was the phrase "I hate this team" was brought up so many times, and they're not saying they're not fans, and they're not saying that they, that they've turned on the players. They're not saying that. They just hate this team and where it's at right now. They hate this season. The fans are battered as well, and they don't know where the hope is going to come from because the old man is probably never selling, so you're waiting for him to die, and he's probably never firing anybody. Like, why does Ethan Katz still have a job, Ed? When you look at the rotation, and you look at the bullpen, and you look at Pedro Grifol run out there the other night to try to get Aaron Bummer out of the game, and he sprinted to the mound because he's like, we're done with you. Like, he trusts like 2-3 guys right now in that bullpen. Why are we waiting till the end of the year to make a change there? Send a statement. Your rotation is completely out of whack, and the only guy you ever really impacted is leaving at the end of the year, according to Bob Nightingale, because you're not even going to make an offer to Lucas Giolito. He's probably getting traded at the trade deadline. What are you keeping this guy around for? What did he do with the pitchers that you assembled in that very expensive bullpen for him to continue to have a job? And the thing that I kept getting from White Sox fans is what we want to hear right now. What they were saying is, I'd really like to just keep track of them on the outskirts of the season. Like, just mention what's happened over the last couple of days so I don't have to watch every game, Chris. And keep hammering the front office, even though I don't think any of them believe that anything will happen substantial. And I think that's how battered the fan base is right now. And it really struck me being out with all of these fans that came up and spoke to me over the course of those 4 or 5 hours I was out in Blue Island. And I guarantee you it's the same way wherever you go right now.
Well, White Sox mouthpieces just tweeted out that actually the fans were telling you that they ate a hummus plate and were complaining about the pitch clock. So none of that really took place.
No. In fact, I'm talking to the fans that don't like the team, but the great majority, according to Rick Hahn and probably an awful lot of the mouthpieces over at the Jerry Reinsdorf television network, okay, all of them are probably still trying to tell you like, oh, the real fans, they shouldn't get down. We're going to get this fixed. We still have a chance. You're 14-28. Coming out of the weekend. You lost 3 of 4 to the Royals, for crying out loud, and 2 out of 3 to a struggling Astros team. Are you kidding me?
That's the problem is that, of course, you're right. Nothing is going to change, blah, blah. Yeah, we're all frustrated. And the real fan base is frustrated too. And if Tim Anderson is saying that he doesn't like this place, Tim Anderson's not saying that because he doesn't like the city of Chicago.
No.
Tim Anderson's not saying that because he doesn't like Pedro Grifol.
No.
Tim Anderson's not saying that even because he doesn't like Jerry Reinsdorf. Tim Anderson is saying that because he understands, and I think the players get it, that the fans are supremely frustrated with the organization. The fans are not coming out. And when you're a player and you're not getting a lot of fan support, it's kind of hard to get motivated to play. I mean, yeah, they're playing for money and they're professionals and all that stuff. They are showing up and they are playing the games, but they're beaten down too. So the only people in the organization that don't seem to be beaten down are the front office and the people who apologize for the front office professionally. and that's really what you're looking at, right?
Yeah, and then the people that are on the periphery that are trying to hang out with the people that professionally apologize. Like, I mean, there's like a whole string of it that's out there. It's like a web of apologies or trying to defend this, and you can't defend this anymore, and you're fine with being upset about it.
That said, there are things going on with the team. It's like anything else. If you take away the championship expectations, and you take away the expectations on this team to be good, there's always things to look for and watch for. And you can see where certain players are, starting to emerge as we thought they would. You can kind of watch the Lucas Giolito watch. I think, like you said, he's going to get traded at the deadline. There's no reason to hold on to him. You can kind of watch for that now and sit there and say, okay, how quickly could this team retool around Luis Robert Jr. and Andrew Vaughn and whatever parts of Eloy Jimenez are actually still functioning at this moment.
I want to get into that.
With a Lucas Giolito trade or with even a Tim Anderson trade, which I know sounds like something that would have been sacrilegious to talk in the offseason, even though I'm pretty sure you and I did.
No, I think we did, and I think that it's a real possibility. I want to get into that. I want to get into what's currently on the roster that you can actually get behind as a fan, even though you don't trust the people in charge to make the right decisions. But we're going to talk about that. I want to do the recap over the last couple of days. I want to hand out the staff of Cork and Carry, and I want to remind you that mom and dad, grandma and grandpa don't want to go to assisted living. Like, they didn't work their entire lives to get put into a home. Let them switch to a new age of life with Hyatt Home Medical Equipment. Anybody who's ill, dealing with injuries, old age, they can get around on their own, live independently with stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, even bathroom remodeling. Hyatt's going to work with your insurance. They're going to give you a discount if you mention Sox in the Basement on top of that. And they have 0% financing for qualified individuals. If you use a CPAP machine and you're unhappy with your vendor, switch today. They're going to directly mail supplies to you, or you go on into that showroom and they have testing rooms. They're going to show you everything that's available to you. They also have the latest in continuous glucose monitors. I want you to learn all about what they do by going to hhme.com or stop in and see Hyatt Home Medical Equipment in their big showroom. It's beautiful, just remodeled, 3518 West 95th Street in Evergreen Park. When I look at the team right now, and I was having this conversation with Dad, you can go and just take a look at the pitching staff. And in reality, it's Lucas Giolito's the only guy you trust right now, even though Dylan Cease finally had a good start. And that was his best start since opening day. Gregory Santos, also trusted by his manager, and his whip is high. It's higher than I like, but his fielding independent pitching at 2.39 and the fact that his manager trusts him, he's getting more and more opportunities coming out of the bullpen. Kendall Graveman is actually having a pretty good season so far. Quietly, I mean, he's doing better than his norm, and Joe Kelly found it again. But besides those four names, Giolito and the three relief pitchers that I mentioned, you don't have very much that you trust, especially after you spend all that money on it. When you look at the actual position players, though, there's so much on this team, Ed. I mean, Yasmani Grandal has had a pretty good year so far. Andrew Vaughn may not be the superstar that you want him to be yet, but his OPS plus is sitting right around 100. He's got a 7.25 OPS. He's only hitting 236. I want him to get it up. He's only got 4 home runs. We need to see more power. But I still feel there's something there. Jake Berger's a beast. He comes back and he immediately contributes to the team. 969 OPS this year. Luis Robert Jr., 897 OPS. On fire over the last couple of weeks. Eloy Jimenez, if he could stay healthy, has at least been average when you compare him to the rest of Major League Baseball. Gavin Sheets, same thing. Hanser Alberto's been the best guy coming off your bench. He's average when you look at his hitting compared to Major League Baseball. Yoan Moncada is actually having a pretty good year when he's on the field. You have some talent on your team. You need a little bit more on the high-end talents, and that's why the White Sox and Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams failed in not going out and getting a Machado or a Harper or some other impact player, because imagine that thrown into this lineup. They also never fixed second base or right field, because notice I didn't mention a second baseman or a right fielder as I went through the guys that are viable on this team. And your bench is weak, so when you suffer an injury, you can't overcome it. That's it. That's the White Sox in a nutshell. Do they have pieces? Yes. Would it be nice if you could look at Berger and Jimenez and Vaughn and Sheets and say, I probably only need 2 of those guys? And wouldn't it be great if my general manager were competent and could actually make a deal to move talent that would be viable on other teams for talent that we need at positions that we don't have? Yeah, that'd be great. But he's incompetent, and that's why he shouldn't be here anymore.
You hit it on the head when you're looking at the players that we have here. And Jake Berger, for example, it's kind of sad that with the time he just missed, and the fact that he really wasn't an everyday player to start the season. I mean, it's not until Yoan Moncada gets hurt that he gets in the lineup on a regular basis, and he gets hurt himself. He's still second on the team by a long shot in home runs, right? He's got 8, and the next closest down is, 4, I think?
Right.
So
I mean, he and Robert Jr. should be in the lineup all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that you have players that you built more marketing around, but that guy's one of the stars in your lineup, and he shouldn't be on the bench. Ever. No. I don't care. When Jimenez comes back, he should be fighting for time over Berger in the DH spot if Moncada's still hitting at third. I'm sorry, it's true. Jake Berger has contributed more to this season, and his arrow is pointing up more, and he's had far less injuries over the last couple of years. I mean, ever since he made it to the majors and got over those initial things after he was drafted. And look at his draft stock. That guy has earned the opportunity to be out there swinging a bat every single game.
Well, how about this for something that, we really should be seeing when Eloy Jimenez is back healthy? Eloy Jimenez has not been saved. His health has not been saved by being a DH this year. So put him back in right field.
Yeah, put him in right.
Put him in right field. Put him back in the outfield, or put him in left and move Benintendi over to right. That's fine. Put him back in the outfield. Have him play out there every day. That's what he wants to do. Make him happy. He's getting hurt, whether he's a DH, whether he's on the field. It doesn't make a lick of difference. The guy's made of glass, apparently. So let him go there, and then let Jake Burger be the DH. And if he needs a day off, Gavin Sheets is a perfectly fine fill-in. If there's a really, really nasty righty that you don't want Burger to have to face, or if he's feeling a little something in one of the Achilles that was repaired, whatever. He's going to take a day off here and there, but Burger should be the primary DH on this team. Eloy Jimenez should go back to the outfield because it doesn't matter. He gets hurt anyway. And that will help stabilize this lineup. And fine, build around Jake Burger. You never traded him, so you either believed in him or nobody else did. Or you were expecting this to happen at some point with the idea that you were going to trade him, but now he's not surrounded by superstar talent. So let Burger eat.
I like it.
It's a weird way to say that, but let Burger
That's
eat.
That's a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt we're making it. Let Burger eat.
Really?
Let's take a look at the recap. This is brought to you by the Village of Lamont. Want to experience a downtown with real history, great eats and drinks, and green spaces filled with adventure? Visit the Village of Lamont. Shop, dine, drink, explore, and visit lamontdowntown.com for information on their 150th anniversary with a special beer that's been put out there in Lamont, celebrating it. I'm going to get out there. All right, here's the recap for those of you who are trying to skip everything that has to do with this team, and I totally understand it. Here's the standings. They're 14-28. They're 9.5 games back. They are lucky to be 9.5 games back because they play in a terrible division. They're 9 back in the wild card as well. None of it matters. You have a negative 71 run differential.
My goodness.
It's horrible. Everything is bad. Don't feel bad if you miss a game from time to time. Don't feel bad if you're like me. My dad goes, "Hey, do you want to go to the game tomorrow night?" And I go, "No, I can't." And he goes, "Well, why?" And I said, "Well, Audrey's got her marching band banquet." He's like, "You really want to go to the marching band banquet?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's $25 a head. They're going to feed me. There's a cash bar. I'm not giving my money to Jerry, and I don't have to watch him lose." Like, normally, I would have told her, "Sweetheart, Papa's got tickets. I got to go." And I will go to games this year, right? But now, things that I normally would have skipped to go to a White Sox game, not skipping them.
Oh, I've got tickets flying at me left and right that just nobody seems to want.
It's been ugly.
It has been ugly.
Some of the uglier players over the last 7 days. Andrew Vaughn hit 174 over his last 6 games with a 512 OPS. Hanser Alberto, who's currently your second baseman with Elvis Andrus injured, or Romy, whoever you want to throw out there that's going to be bad. Alberto's actually been good over the year, but over the last 6 games, and he's played all 6 of the last 7 days, 158 with a 449 OPS. Even Gavin Sheets falling off. He was hot for a while, 222 with a 611 OPS. The only guy that's starting to heat up a little bit, Andrew Benintendi, who had a 775 OPS over the last week. And then the winner of the Staff and Cork and Carry.
It started as a gag. I write a blog called Mismatched Sox that companionizes with our little show here. And in one of the early ones, I suggested that if Rick Hahn doesn't get his stuff together, that we should just bind and gag him and toss him to the staff of Cork and Carry and let them deal with him. And then I realized that not only is the staff of Cork and Carry a group of people that would deal with Rick Hahn for one thing and also provide fantastic service when you go in the shadow of the ballpark before the game, after the game, but also it sounded like some sort of mythical weapon, right?
It does,
like something that you would wield, the staff of Cork and Carry, and use it to smite thine enemies. And so I started handing it out every time I write a blog. And basically, when you go over the last 7 days or so, none of the pitchers are really worth it, although Giolito's not been terrible. He's just been sort of okay. But by far, the only guy on this team that is doing anything of note in the past week or two is Luis Robert Jr. with his 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, a 348 average of 1.305 OPS. I mean, just absolutely killing it right now for the Sox.
Listen, go back 15 days. Go back 15 days. His last 13 games. That OPS is higher. The batting average is higher.
Oh my gosh, it is. It's 422 with a 1.442 OPS.
Yeah, he's killing it, man. He's on fire. And you know what? He's a star. He's a star surrounded by a team that isn't good enough. He is Mike Trout. You know how they always said he's like Mike Trout? He is Mike Trout.
We didn't mean that way.
No, but that's what he is. He is.
At least he gets to wield the staff of Cork and Kerry in a mythological sense and smite his enemies with it. Even though Mike Trout, would probably sit there and go, "Hey, I'll take Tim Anderson on my team." Tim, you won't hate it here.
I know,
or
you're right.
Eat a hummus plate or whatever you said.
There is talent on the team. It's really the pitching staff. But looking at Luis Robert Jr., looking at him and what he's done, and he deserves the staff of Cork and Kerry, and he'll probably hold it for a while with lightning going off above his head. When he wields it above his head, the wind whips up and everything like that. I've got it. Your mythological staff. I see him growing a gray beard while he holds it. I would imagine whoever holds it, like immediately is transformed into some sort of robes.
The pinwheels go off on the scoreboard, but instead of fireworks, it's just lightning.
Exactly.
And fire.
That's what happens when you have it, and I'll be looking for that if I get around to watching a game, right? But when I look at what he's doing right now, it all comes after he was held accountable. Isn't that amazing? We always talk about how there's a lack of accountability. Kenny Williams thinks there's tons of it. There isn't. That's why all the same people still work there, even though they're all inept and the team is constantly mired in mediocrity or worse. But you had a manager hold him accountable. And of course they blamed the hamstring and he sat out for a day or so. But I've also felt like there was a little bit of truth there. And just a wake-up call for a player. And look what he's done since that moment. And I wonder how much leeway the manager has when you have the pressure of a front office that doesn't want to show their mistakes off to everybody, because you do see them almost force-feeding the same players to Pedro and not switching things up. I mean, the bullpen is really like the big thing, right? I mean, there are guys who are performing down in the minors that if they really were trying to win, they'd be rotating some of these guys out and bringing other players up. And then you see Ethan Katz still sitting there as the pitching coach. Let your manager do something else. Because you could see how frustrated he is with the staff. But look at what happened when he was able to hold a player accountable, even if it was in a little way, and how the player responded. And that's how professional baseball teams operate. Hailstorm Brewing Company, the official brewery of Sox in the Basement, out in Tinley Park at 8060 186th Street, right off of 80th Avenue. Has lunch specials that you wouldn't believe. In fact, their Scratch Kitchen now opens at 11 a.m. for lunch Tuesday through Sunday. It is completely acceptable in this day and age to go and have lunch and a beer at a working brewery that's got a beer hall vibe to it, like it's a German beer hall. That's got an incredible tap room that's in there. Have your next business luncheon or just take a break in the middle of the day over at Hailstorm Brewing. Take a listen, take a gander to some of the things that are on the menu at this very moment. They've already had their smoked chicken wings featured on Chicago's Best. That's how good they are. They were out for like a month, and boom, they're on television. Their spicy roast beef sandwich, their andouille po' boy, their cheesy flatbread, their pork belly sliders, whatever you're going and getting, wash it down with a delicious beer. Several of them have won several awards. Get out there to Tinley Park, 8060 186th Street, right off of 80th Avenue. And as you heard with that music, as I started talking about Hailstorm, it's time for the Sox Nerd. Dave Marin sits up there and puts all those nifty tidbits and nuggets up on the scoreboard at Guaranteed Rate Field, and he joins me right now. How are you, Sox Nerd?
Great, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, man. I got to be on the field last week. Did you hear about that? Since we last talked, I had batting practice at the Rate.
I saw that. I'm glad you didn't drop my name. They would have escorted you right out of there. No, it looked like it was a great time.
It was a great time. We're talking about Luis Robert today, and we handed him the staff of Cork and Kerry that he will wield until somebody takes it from him because he's playing so well. Do you have anything on him?
Well, Chris, as I've told you many times, that my late mother's mantra was always to dig for the pony. That is, aggressively and enthusiastically seek out the positive. Lately, that's been impossible, so good night. Just kidding. The most positive thing the Sox have going right now is Luis Robert. With that in mind, here are a few nerd-esque gems on the Sox center fielder. Robert is killing it in May so far. When the Houston series ended, Robert was leading the majors with 19 hits and 6 homers in the month. If he maintains that pace, certainly the club May home run record of 12 set by Frank Thomas in 1994 and the club May hit record of 43 set by Buck Weaver in 1920 are in reach. This May shouldn't come as a surprise, though, based on Robert's track record. May has always been his best month. His surge in the last few days has boosted his career average in the month to 370 with a 433 on-base percentage. At this moment in time, that 370 May average is tops in Sox history and second all-time among players with at least 135 at-bats in the month. Only Ike Boone's 377 average from 1924 to 1932 is higher all-time than Robert's May average. Boone, by the way, played with the Sox at a reported 300 pounds in 1927, but May was the only month that season that he did not play for the club because of a bout of appendicitis. Robert emerged from the weekend series as the White Sox all-time leader with a 395 average against the Astros. Who's second among Sox with at least 10 games against Houston? How about Alejandro Diaz, who hit the Astros at a 375 clip from 2012 to 2015. Pedro Gafal has moved Robert all over the order so far this season, starting him at least once in the first 6 spots of the order. Robert's best slot has been number 5, where he has slashed 364, 440, and 864. His worst spot is at the top, where he is hitting 056 and 6 starts. I found it really interesting that Robert's splits show he's really good early in the game. In the first and second innings this season, Robert is hitting 421. In the middle 3 innings, Robert is at 205, while he is hitting 288 in innings 7 through 9. Along those same lines, Robert is batting 412 when facing a starter for the first time, but only 222 the second time through, and a meager 179 the third time through. And then there's his defense. Robert is leading big league center fielders with 7 defensive run saves and covers ground like no Sox outfielder I have ever seen, with the possible exception of Mike Cameron and Lance Johnson. The best number associated with Robert, though, is his age. The man is only 25, which hopefully means he's still ascending. Now my zinger, Jake Marisnick. Jake Marisnick? What, are you kidding me? Believe it or not, the journeyman outfielder is already an all-time leader in Sox history. No position player has appeared in more Sox games without a plate appearance than Jake Marisnick. Since being promoted from AAA, Marisnick has played in 5 games without batting. He's made 4 appearances as a late-inning defensive replacement and 1 as a pinch runner. Of course, 1 at-bat will blow all this up, but at this moment, Jake Marisnick is the king of White Sox batless appearances. And that last item alone is why I am known as the Sox Nerd. Thank you, Chris. Take care.
Ed the Sox Nerd brings up Jake Marisnick, a guy who was elevated to the roster due to injury. I was surprised about Yasmani Grandal going the entire weekend. You see Carlos Perez come up, see Carlos Perez go down so they can make room for Berger. You never see Grandal. On Sunday, all they had was Sebi, from what I could tell. And I don't know if Grandal's able to come in an emergency, then fine, but it's always a hesitation to put him on the IL, and they wait too long, and then sometimes they come back, and I don't think they're ready yet.
Well, and I wonder, too, are they so reticent to put guys on the IL because they've had so many guys on the IL? And that's been the story of this team for a couple of years now, of Robert spending time on the IL when, you know, you're kind of looking at him going, okay, he got hurt. There was a whole Madrigal getting injured a couple of years back. Eloy is obviously a thing. Of all the guys that have spent time on the injured list that you would sort of expect, Yasmani Grandal's one of them, okay? I mean, this is a veteran catcher. Veteran catchers get hurt when they spend time on the injured list. It's a fact of life. I mean, that's why most teams will actually have a guy, you know, more or less be in a split situation at Grandal's age. I mean, he's 34, and that's a lot of miles on a catcher's body. He's been doing this a long time. But I think you're right. They rush back, and they don't have the depth, and they don't have anybody coming up. That's why we're stuck with Lance Lynn, frankly, is there is just nothing in the minors right now for the White Sox that suggests that they should be bringing a guy up to have him start games, because the only starter that you have at Charlotte that's really doing anything of note is Nate Fisher, He's got a 3.38 ERA, 1.23 WHIP. He's done all right for himself. Jesse Schultens, who's already been up, he's done all right for himself. But you don't have, like highly touted prospects waiting to come up and take spots in the rotation. And you don't have highly touted prospects sitting at Charlotte waiting to come up and take over for, Carlos Perez is there. He's ready to take over for Yaz if you need to put him on the IL. But for the most part, the White Sox minor league system right now is just bereft of guys that are the next guy up.
I clicked on the Texas Rangers just randomly. They're a first-place team. They're 25-15 right now, 4 games up on the Houston Astros in the AL West.
By the way, a team that the Sox are supposed to be as good or bad as that going into this year, according to Pacoda.
They have 8 players currently listed on their injured list, including Mitch Garver and Corey Seager and Jacob deGrom and Jake Odorizzi, among others. And what's funny is you hear 2 starting pitchers are injured. They're not shallow. They still have Dane Dunning that they got off us, and Andrew Heaney, and John Gray, and Martin Perez, and Nathan Eovaldi. And Corey Bradford's starting a game for them, or actually did yesterday. This is a team that said, we need to make sure we have depth because we want to compete. Why are they run differently than the White Sox? I don't know. Ask Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams and Jerry Reinsdorf, who keeps those fools in the front office. Go ask them, because we don't operate that way. But the Rangers are able to go and do it, and there's really no difference in terms of the structure and the payroll between the 2 teams either. And the ability of the Rangers to put together a team that's sitting in first place shows that there are much more confident front offices out there. We just have guys that have jobs for life. And you know what? I'll pick another one. Let's pick another first place team. Let's pick the best team in baseball right now, the Tampa Bay Rays. They are filled up on the injured list, and they're all pitchers.
It's their entire opening day pitching staff seems to be on the IL right now.
Yeah, Baz Glasnow, Rasmussen, I hope I'm saying his name right.
Rasmussen?
Yeah, Jeffrey Springs, they're all on there. Plus they got 3 relief pitchers. They're all on the IL. They got 7 pitchers.
Including their closer. Pete Fairbanks was their closer, right? So their closer's on the IL. Rasmussen and Glasnow were their top 2 starters, and Jeffrey Springs was their number 3.
Yeah, you've got 7 pitchers on the IL. And they keep winning. Competent pitching coach, good player development, depth put in there by the general manager. That's the difference right there. It's not because the White Sox are unlucky. And it's not even probably because their training staff's bad at things. I've started to believe that the front office just likes to make them the scapegoat because they want to hide how bad they are at putting a team together.
Oh, I don't believe that for a second that the training staff is culpable in this. I mean,
everybody gets injuries. Everybody.
Yeah.
Teams in first place right now have massive injuries across the board. But guarantee you're gonna get told, well, we didn't have Liam. Remember we said that? We said they were gonna do that. Wait till that comes out. Wait for them to do that. Wait for them to pull that at some point. Well, if we would have had our closer, Garrett Crochet was ready at the beginning of the season. Everything would have been different with this bullpen. Give me a break. Look at what other teams go through and how they survive and how we can't.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.